from Seaborn and Pandas?
No, I don't think so. All right, I'm going live.
All right.
All right, I'm going live. Oh. And that's what happens when I forget to mute right at the beginning of the live video. All right, welcome to UAB Data Science Club. Today we're going to talk about time series analysis with Pandas. We have in the past talked about using Pandas to manipulate data before, but in our lab at work, we've been messing a lot with doing some time series analysis, and we've been kind of learning things the hard way. You know, you try something that doesn't work, and then you struggle a little bit. And one of our colleagues found this tutorial, time series analysis with Pandas, and recommended it to us. And since we want to go through it anyway, and it's related to data science, it seems like it'll be a great thing for us to give a try to do.
Yeah, and time series data is one of the common types of data sets that you're going to find out there, or most of the problems that you're going to be working on. So it's good to have an idea of how you can manipulate or use that time series data set with some inbuilt functionality from Pandas. Pandas has some inbuilt functionalities that you can use to work with this with a time series data set, and that's what this tutorial basically discusses, and that's what we're going to take a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just posted the link in the chat there for anybody that's joining us live. I'll try to get it in as part of the video description after we finish. But yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So in order to do this, we've got to get some resources up and running. So we're going to go to Chiha, and I've already started up a Jupyter notebook, which is what we're going to use. But if you are going to do it yourself and you have a Blazor ID and you're at UAB, then you can go to UAB, rc.uab.edu, and then go over to interactive apps and click on Jupyter Notebook. And then set your parameters and click launch. But I'm not going to do that this time because I've already got one up and running. So I'm going to click connect to Jupyter. And it should take me to our Data Science Club folder that we've been building over the course of these videos. And we'll just go ahead and make a new folder and refresh.
So there's that untitled folder.
Yes, untitled, and we'll rename that time series analysis. Pandas, right? And we're going to go inside there, and we're going to create a new Jupyter notebook with our NBOTW environment, which we created really early on. And so here we go. We got our notebook, which is great.
If you're fairly new to these videos, in the playlist where you're watching this on UAB Research Computing on YouTube, that would be the first video where we created this NBOTW Conda environment.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go split screen. Hopefully it doesn't make it too hard to see what's going on. I'll try to make the text pretty big on both sides. And so let's see. So the first thing we got to do is get our data set. And so we're going to use Open Power Systems data from Germany. And so it looks like you can go to that website directly, or they've actually pulled it out as a CSV file on their GitHub. And so we'll come back up here and copy that link in a second. But first we're going to come down, and I guess we'll come back to that, I guess, when we need to actually import the data. But rather than downloading it and then re-uploading it to Chiha, we're going to just pull it in from the URL when we get there. But but it wants us to play around with some time series stuff in Pandas first. So if we look at this first line, so we want to import Pandas as PD, which is great. I'm going to put a new cell below that. I don't like to import my libraries and do stuff in the same thing, so I'm going to separate that. And then, so we're going to import Pandas. And then after we do that, we're going to run this cell, which is change this string of 2018, January 15th, 3:45 p.m. into a date time. And so all this does is convert something that looks like a date and a time into the standard timestamp format that Pandas likes to use.
Yeah, and Pandas to date time is pretty intelligent. So it should understand a lot of different ways in which you can write your date and time. So like the two examples that William just ran on his Jupyter notebook. In one, you have dash and the date, how it's written. So dash is the divider between year, month, and date. And in the second one, it's a slash. But we didn't have to specify anything different where the divider looks like this or divider looks like that. Date time is sort of intelligent enough to identify this thing on its own.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I would say, and this is kind of interesting, it's the next thing that they recommend, is to specify how you're using the date time, because in the US a lot of times we use month, day, year as our way of writing a date like this, of like 7/8/1952 generally means the 7th month, the 8th day in the year 1952. But I know in Germany, for instance, they do day, month, year, or year, month, day. And so they don't flip-flop the time durations as they write it. So a date like this would be ambiguous because there's not something larger than 12 in these first two. And so by specifying day first, we're saying this is day, month, year, not month, day, year. And so if we run that, it'll show us that it picked the eighth month rather than the 7th month. And a nice thing is it can actually pull in a column where everybody has written the date and time differently, and it can convert it all into the same format, which is really powerful. So that's good. Let's see. All right. So it looks like we've got some additional formatting stuff that we can do. And this is if you know what your date format should look like, then you can use this format command or format option and specify your format directly.
Yeah, this basically shows that all the values, all the inputs that you have entered, they are in this basic format where the first one is the month, and then there would be a slash, and then there would be the day, and then there would be the year. If we try to change it, like in the format, if you change the slash to dash, I think it's going to error out in the last command that you ran. So in the format section, if you try to do a dash,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll crash. So the reason that this is actually points to why this is a good idea to specify the format. And it's because when we don't specify the format, then every time Pandas sees something that you're trying to convert into a date time, it has to go through an entire function process to say, huh, this looks like a date time. Is this month, day, year? Is this time, month, day, year? Is this day, month, year? Is this year, month, day? Are those commas? Are they dashes? What's the separator between the date? How do I deal with this? Whereas when you specify the format, you're explicitly telling Pandas to not do that kind of ambiguous formatting function that it does already. And you're saying, no, it'll always be month/day/year. And so that way it doesn't have to go through that whole process. And so if you're ingesting a large database, this can speed things up a lot. All right. So now that we've fiddled with date times a little bit, we can read in our data. All right. So we're going to read in this open. All right. I've already forgot what it's called, what the acronym stands for. Open Power Systems Data. There we go. All right. So we're going to read this in, but we're going to get an error, right? Because I don't actually have this Open Power Systems Data German daily CSV file on my machine. And so we're going to scroll right back up to where they say we can download the data. And we're going to copy the link address. We're going to pop that in here. All right. So hopefully, because I'm specifying the full path here to this file, it'll just read it. Yeah, there we go. And so now, instead of downloading and then uploading and putting it in the right spot, because it's a CSV file and it's not huge, we can get Pandas to read it directly into a data frame from the URL, which is great. All right, and then like we've seen before, we can use the head command to look at a few things. We can use the tail command. Oh, what am I doing there? We can use the tail command to look at a few things that are at the end.
All right, so it looks like in 2006, there was no. So does this show how much this open power system something? Does it say that this is how it's using the electricity, or the electricity that it's using, this is how it's generated?
So I'm not 100% sure. It looks like,
oh yeah,
it includes countrywide total electricity consumption numbers. And then it also contains the wind power, solar power production for that same time.
Yeah, so it looks like in 2006, they didn't have any wind or solar power generated.
Yes. Yeah. And which is what we would kind of expect, is that you get more wind and solar power generated in more recent years than previously. It looks like this last column is just an addition of the wind plus the solar column.
Yeah, and it's impressive. I mean, at the end of 2017, they are almost 60% of what they actually consumed, they generated using wind plus solar.
Yeah, it almost makes me suspicious of the data, but
yeah, that was my next question. Do we think this data is real?
It could be, but I don't know. I don't know. All right, so we've looked at the head, we've looked at the tail. And we can look at the data types. This is all stuff we've kind of looked at before. All right, and then, all right, so we're going to actually specify that the index for this data frame should be the date, which makes sense.
Yeah, rather than the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or that
Yeah, 'cause that doesn't
4,300
do
number that you
anything
see.
for us. Yeah, that doesn't do anything for us. And so now, if we look at the index, it will just tell us, you know, that those dates that match those rows, which is great. And okay, so this is saying instead of explicitly specifying the date column as the index after it's already been read in, since we know that the date, column should be our index and it's inside of this data set, we could just go ahead and say, hey, Pandas, when you read in this data frame, go ahead and convert everything that looks like a date to date time format. That's what this parse dates function does, or parameter does. And then specify that my index column equals 0, because I know that the 0th column, or the first column in my data set, is the date column.
Yeah, so one thing that I noticed in our Jupyter notebook, the D type still says object rather than date time. 64.
Interesting, interesting. Let's try this. And we'll pop in our full URL. Okay. So see, that took a little bit of extra time, probably because it was trying to make sure everything was converted properly. And yeah, like Ravi noted, up here is saying that our index is an object type. But here, because we asked Pandas to parse the dates, it went ahead and converted that index into a date time format, which is good.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. So another useful aspect of the date time index is the individual date time components. Yeah, so this is kind of nice, is something that you don't have to kind of backwards compute what the month, day, or year was from a date. If it's in the date time format, you can just say .year, .month, or .weekday, and it'll actually just go ahead and give you that. And so we can look at this. Now, I've never used this sample command, but it looks kind of like the head command, but it just takes 5 random rows instead of.
I like this better than head. I mean, well, technically all of them have their advantages based on what kind of data you have, but I like this, where you can have 5 samples.
I think if you're going to do head and tail, you should do sample as well. That's really neat.
Yeah.
All right, so the other nice thing is, because our index is date time, we can actually specify that we want data based on the date time directly. And so we can specify, hey, 2017, August 10th, give me the data at that location. And it'll tell me the year, month, day, as well as the power consumption and production, which is great. And we can do that for a range of dates. So that gives us 3 dates. So that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
And we can actually do it, apparently, because it's a date time index, we can give it a month instead of a day, which that's nice. I've never seen the range or the month aspect. So that's
That's pretty neat.
That's pretty handy. All right. So that alone is pretty useful. I don't know how long we've been going now. Probably about 20 minutes. Do you want to do this visualing time series data? And then we'll, I don't know how long this part is.
Yeah, at least we can do the visualizing part first one, and then we can come back next time.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so in an effort to do some cool stuff, but not to do so much stuff that the video becomes unwieldy, we'll do this next section and see where we're at. And then we will probably break this tutorial up into a second video since there's so much to dig into here in this tutorial, which is great. All right, so this next part, we're gonna start visualizing data. So we're gonna import the matplotlib, which is really useful. That's kind of the standard Python plotting library. We're going to also import Seaborn. Seaborn is a wrapper on top of matplotlib. It standardizes a lot of the formatting issues, helps make prettier charts, which is great. And then now, because we've done those things, and I've actually never plotted things this way, but it makes sense. So you can plot things by specifying what data in your data frame and then use the dot plot command.
Yeah, and that's one of the good reasons to have date time as an index, because now it's plotting against that index. So the y column is the column name that you have specified, consumption, and the x column is the index on which it's plotting it. So yeah, x is the date 2006 to 2018, and y is the consumption that we specified, the thing that which we were plotting, and it looks thick because of the line width that we have provided. If we don't provide any line width, I think it should just look like a straight line. I don't know the advantage of providing a line width over here, though.
Let's take it out and try it again. Oh, apparently it defaults to a thicker line.
Interesting.
So that's too thin for us to really see. Yeah. It probably defaults to 1, would be my guess.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, so now let's see what we can do here. All right, so we can see that the plot method has chosen pretty good tick locations every 2 years. So, I mean, this is interesting because when I have seen / attempted to plot date time data in the past with Pandas, there's a lot of formatting stuff you got to do to get Seaborn in particular to recognize the date time. But apparently, if you just specify that it's a date, that the date time is your index, then that takes care of a lot of the goofiness involved with plotting date time information. So that's nice.
Yeah.
All right, so if we plot, all right, so now rather than plotting, oh, that's the data that we're looking at. Now rather than plotting the consumption alone, and rather than plotting it as lines, we're going to plot it as dots. And we'll go ahead and pop that in. And so we can see how the consumption changes from day to day, and how the production of solar and wind power increases over time.
Yeah, so it looks like you see two highs, at least in consumption, two highs in two highs in the range of 2 years, so 2006 to 2008. It seems like there are two highs and two valleys.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be summer and winter where you see two different kind of consumptions.
I think so. That would be my guess, because I guess I would guess that the year starts at January.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that we're starting and ending in a trough or a valley. And that would also be when I would expect the lowest amount of solar energy to be generated in Germany,
True.
because they have a similar climate to what we have in the US. And in January, the sun is a lot lower in the sky and it's not as sunny as long.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that you get peaks in the summer. What's interesting here is it looks like you also get not as clear of peaks, but you get peaks in the winter for the wind power.
Yeah.
That also makes some kind of sense, at least.
And there seems to be a general, so apart from at least in the solar and wind, there also seems to be a little, so if you'll see the peaks are a bit higher every time in both solar and wind. That means that they're just increasing consumption, or sorry, they're increasing the generation of power using these two methods, solar and wind.
Yeah.
So they might be adding more solar cells or adding more wind turbines.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right. So it looks like with that location function where we could specify like a month of data, we can also specify a year of data and then go ahead and plot it, which is kind of neat. Yeah. So we could change this to the month of January or February. And so then we're just seeing the data for the month of February in the year 2017. We can look in 2019. No, it doesn't look like we have up to 2019. So let's go.
Yeah, I think 2017 December is the last that we have.
Yes. So 2017-12. There we go. All right. Yeah. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It looks. I think we could also specify a single day if we want. Oh, but I guess that's a single data point, so that's not useful.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to specify,
Range.
yeah, like a range of days. Yeah. So you can specify a range of days. So that's pretty fun. Oh, okay, and that's what they do next here is specify a range of 2 months of the consumption plot. And here they're keeping the little dots in there, just giving you a feel for the different ways that you can make your plots. All right, so at this point we're sitting right around 30 minutes. So I think we're going to save the rest of this because we're about halfway through. If we look at the scroll bar on the right, we're about halfway through this tutorial. So next week we'll come back and we'll start with this customizing time series plots, and we'll start going through there. Totally feel free to, just continue on with this tutorial and finish it out before we get there. It looks like it's a really nice set of functionality to get a feeling for as you move through it. And then this frequencies is what I'm really excited to get to see the types of things you can do with that this as frequency function.
Yeah, I think they have enough, a lot of new things that I haven't seen before. I have used some functionalities of some advantages of placing date time in the index column, but I have definitely not tried this range, or you can specify a month and all those things. I have definitely not tried those. So
Yeah,
I think,
I think the yeah, specifying the date time as the index and having that make it easier to plot date time information was worth us diving into this tutorial. So that's good.
yeah,
So all right, well guys, until next time, feel free to reach out for any questions that you might have about this. And like I said, Ravi and I'll hop into the next half of this tutorial next week, so that we can get a good feeling for the rest of it, and then hopefully that gives you a basis to use this in your own work.